Happy VidNotes Day, students. Mr. Deegan here. We are studying Unit 5, The Rise of Nationalism, and we are focusing on Lesson 3 today. Please turn to page number 6 of your Unit 5 VidNotes packet for the notes. And today we're going to be exploring post-Napoleon Europe and a meeting of monarchs called the Congress of Vienna. Here's Napoleon. What happens when Napoleon loses power in France? Europe must recover from all that Napoleon did. And they have a meeting. And here is all of the attendees of this meeting. What do they have in common? They are all monarchs. And they say things like, "No more revolutions. We're tired of all of this chaos, even if the people feel like they have a voice. No more Napoleons." These monarchs don't want one person taking control of most of Europe. This one says, never again. These monarchs never again want one person and one country controlling one continent. And the leader of the Congress of Vienna is this man, Austrian Clemens von Metternich. What happens? Let's find out. Our guiding question today talks about revolutions. Are revolutions worth the disruptions they cause? As people, we like stability. We like consistency. We do not like surprises and unexpected things happening. What was that? That was unexpected. My heart rate starts to increase. I don't like that. I want my government to be consistent. So are revolutions worth the disruptions they cause? We'll figure out today. Why were European monarchs so worried in the mid-1800s? Well, the French Revolution saw chaos. You have King Louis XVI in 1793. Here he is, and here's his head. He was guillotined in 1793 during the Reign of Terror. Monarchs all across Europe heard this news and were terrified. Also, after the French Revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte takes power, and in purple is the French Empire. Under his control, France expands their empire to include most of Europe. And these monarchs in Europe are afraid another Napoleon might take hold. So these are reasons for fear. So the Congress of Vienna is convened. They meet in 1815. And the goal of the monarchs at this meeting is to fix the problems that Napoleon created in Europe as the conqueror and emperor of France. And who attended these meetings? Nobles and monarchs. Here you see a cartoon that pokes fun at who attended. These weren't third estate members. These weren't common citizens. These were monarchs who might wear these types of hats. And all of these men had something in common. They were former enemies of Napoleon. So they met in Vienna. Vienna is a city in the country of Austria, located in Eastern Europe, just south of Germany. You see Austria here, and the red dot is Vienna, the city of this important 1815 meeting. What happens at the Congress of Vienna? There is a three-part plan that these monarchs have in place. First, they establish a balance of power doctrine. They want to balance power to ensure that one country does not gain too much power in the continent of Europe. Number two, these monarchs want to redraw the political map of Europe. They want to create stronger nations that border France, and they want to join 39 German states to create a German confederation. And here to the right, you see this new German confederation, and the black line indicates the border line that the monarchs draw as a part of the Congress of Vienna. Number three, monarchs want to restore monarchies in Europe to ensure that the government keeps order. That sounds an awful lot like Thomas Hobbes and his view of the world, where monarchs are needed to save human beings from their sinful, selfish, and chaotic natures. So imagine that. Monarchs agreeing to restore monarchs to power. There's some self-interest here. These monarchs want to prevent another French Revolution and prevent the people from taking so much power that they chop off the heads of their rulers. The Congress of Vienna leads to the development of two different political philosophies in Europe. These two political philosophies were liberal and conservative. Let's talk about liberal first. So a liberal philosophy, usually you're a middle-class business leader and a merchant, and you want to give more power to elected parliaments. And these parliaments would be elected by educated people and landowners. Overall, these liberals were new, they were enlightened, they were called members of the left. And these liberals would support the French Revolution and the Enlightenment, and they would tend to support the idea of using reason and science. And here are three examples of liberals. Voltaire, the French philosopher who talked about religious tolerance. Robespierre, Maximilian was the leader of the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror. And Thomas Jefferson, a leader in the United States who talked about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So all of these summarize liberals in Europe. Meanwhile, conservatives, a different side of things. Conservatives are usually wealthy property owners and nobility, and they argued for protecting the traditional monarchies of Europe. In France, some conservatives were even willing to approve constitutional monarchies where power is shared between legislator, Congress, Parliament, and the king. Conservatives are generally from the old traditional order. They would rather maintain the status quo. You might hear conservatives being called right-wing politicians. And again, they are more traditional-minded. Conservatives think that there should be obedience to authority and devotion to organized religion. Conservatives think there should be no representative governments. And four examples of such conservatives in Europe during the time of the Congress of Vienna were Louis XVI, Metternich of Austria, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, and Pope Pius VI, the leader of the Catholic Church. The terms of the Congress of Vienna, meaning what was agreed upon by the monarchs, led to widespread, meaning far-reaching, discontent, meaning anger, among common citizens of Europe, especially those in Italy and Germany. This deserves a frowny face. This discontent led to revolutions, violent uprisings starting in 1848, all across the continent of Europe. Now you're going to see a video from study.com that talks more about these bloody uprisings.
It is believed over 50 countries experienced revolution, with a few notable exceptions, namely Great Britain, Russia, Spain, and some of the Scandinavian states. Although some minor reforms were achieved in certain cases, the revolutions were generally not a success. In most cases, the revolutions were suppressed and the monarchs of Europe were able to hang on to power. The revolutions of 1848 were definitely violent. Tens of thousands of people were killed. The revolutions of 1848 began in Sicily, Italy, in January 1848. Italy during this time was not an independent nation like it is now. Then it was broken up into smaller states controlled by the Austrian Empire. This revolution was started by Italian nationalists who wanted independence from Austrian rule. The Nationalists were initially successful in establishing an independent republic. It lasted only 16 months, however, before the Bourbon rulers regained control. At the time of the Revolution, most Europeans thought it was an isolated event. Little did they know revolution would spread to the whole continent. The February Revolution is another name for the 1848 Revolution in France. This revolution began after King Louis Philippe's July monarchy government suspended the people's right to participate in political banquets. Anger over the policy peaked around February 22nd to 23rd as Parisians put on demonstrations, erected barricades, and fought against royal authorities. Fearful of the growing unrest, King Louis Philippe abdicated the throne. A few days later, the Second French Republic was proclaimed. The spirit of revolution in France soon spread to its neighbor, Germany. Like Italy, Germany at this time was not a unified nation-state, but consisted of 39 separate states under the German Confederation. The March Revolution, as it is called, stemmed from a desire for a unified Germany. In this revolution, middle and working-class people revolted against the structure of the German Confederation and demanded greater political liberalization, especially freedom from censorship. The March Revolution failed to unify Germany, in part because of a split between the working class and the middle class. It would take another 25 years or so before Germany was unified.
Why the fighting? Well, national pride, economic competition, and democratic ideals stimulated the growth of nationalism, pride in one's country, and inspired citizen revolts against the monarchies, as you just saw in the study.com clip. In France, in Austria, in Italy, and in Germany, citizens revolt against the monarchies. But as you see by this red stamp, France failed. The uprisings in Austria failed. The uprisings in Italy failed. The uprisings in Germany failed. The revolutions of 1848 failed. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, you see it here in Northern Europe, the UK avoided the revolutions of 1848. Here is King William and Queen Mary. They come to power after the English Civil War and the Glorious Revolution, and they agree to share power with Parliament. And the people of England are largely happy about this arrangement. So, while there is bloody uprising across Europe, in France, in Germany, in Italy, there's peace in Britain. Why? In 1832, Great Britain passed the Reform Law of 1832, which granted the right to vote to most adult middle-class men. That was unusual for Europe at the time. And a year later, in 1833, you see a man in chains. Well, in 1833, Parliament passed a law abolishing slavery in British territories. Not just in Britain itself, but in any land that Britain owned, slavery was illegal. This comes before the United States does that. So Britain was early in abolishing slavery. We're almost done with lesson 3 of unit 5, ladies and gentlemen. Please answer those summary questions for 3 points. And when you're done with that, a preview. Next lesson, we're going to be talking about the unification, the coming together of Germany, and the unification and coming together of Italy as distinct, unified countries. These countries are only about 150 years old. Unusual, you might think. We'll learn more next time. Until that time, this is Mr. Deegan signing off.